Hello and welcome to this tutorial. This tutorial is intended to help you wire either your KC or any other brand of off-road lights that run a relay. What's nice about these KCs, they are the Apollo Pro Series. The beam pattern is the fog light. What's nice about them is that they come with a nice wiring harness and wiring schematic. Couple things that are unique about this Jeep in comparison to some of the other videos that I saw out on the web about these lights. It's an automatic, so there were lots of questions about where to pass the wires through the firewall, and I'll explain that since there's not the grommel where the manual transmission linkage is. Also, another nice thing about what I'll be showing you here is several of the videos pretty much set up the circuit and got the lights running, but these I've run the switch all the way through to where the factory fog light switch was. Really the only tidying up that I need to do to make this look almost like they came from the factory is this needs to be centered and then held down with either some liquid nails or Gorilla Glue just to give it a little bit of rigidity. But when you flip them on, the lights do work. So without further ado, I'll get into this video and kind of give you some tips and tricks on how to make your install a little bit smoother. Alright, so once you're ready to begin the installation, I would recommend going ahead and taking off the driver's side door. You're going to be in and out of the cabin quite a bit, so it'll just make your life easier not to have that door in the way. If you've never done so before, you can see these two hinges. Just remove the two Torx nuts and then remove the little cloth retaining strap and unroll the windows, pull up if you've never done so before, and that should remove the door. KC provides this pretty good wiring diagram. It gives you a good idea of what needs to occur during the installation. I personally would recommend starting off with the green and white wires. Those are the ones that you'll need to pass into the cabin. So in order to do so with the automatic, I passed it through that grommel right there. That's the engine. There's the grommel. So it's pretty close, but it's entirely out of the way. It zip ties to that wiring loom really nicely. If you have a manual TJ, you can see down there where my wiring loom / transmission linkage, whatever it is, passes into the cabin. That'll just be a rubber grommel for the manual owners. The two wires come through up there, as you can see, and once you've gotten this far, you will need to start removing some of the trim pieces in order to take those green and white wires and route them all the way to where the switch is in this little switch box. Alright, so now that you have passed your green and white wires through that grommel, they'll be dangling down, and in order to successfully get them to that switch box, you'll need to remove this trim piece right here where that vent is. It's just held in by some pressure retention clips, so just like take a flathead screwdriver and kind of pry it up and it'll come out really easily. From there, you will take your center stack right here and you're going to need to remove this outer cover. There'll be a screw about right here and about right here, as well as a third one inside of the ashtray. In order to remove that, you just press on that little center piece and it'll come right out. And then you pretty much just pull it out. You can open up the glove box if you need some leverage. And then in order to get out the switch box, all you have to do is there are going to be somewhere between, I think it's supposed to be 4 screws. And you just unscrew those 4 on the switch box and it'll come right out. You'll need to unplug the fog light switch, windshield wipers, defroster, and the auxiliary power / cigarette lighter. And from there, you should be able to access the fog light housing. Alright, so once you've removed that switchboard, and it very well may vary as mine's a 98, so I think as the TJ progressed, the switchboard in there changed a little bit, But the process should be the same. You should be able, I think that the switches still remain the same size. They might have added more or taken some away, but I do believe that they should be the same dimensions. So you'll need to take a smaller flathead screwdriver and you'll just pry up where the fog light switch is, and it'll kind of pop the whole unit for the switch out. And then once again, you kind of just tear it down. You'll need to, then you'll have the fog light with its housing, and you'll need to take the screwdriver again and pry it open one more time, and then you kind of break it down into these pieces right here. You'll need to keep that housing in order to plug it back into the switchboard, which is what allows the KC light switch to fit. You just kind of, the rocker itself is just held together by a pin. This is one of the pieces that you'll remove with that flathead, and this piece just comes right out. So it's no big deal to remove. You'll have to unscrew the two little light bulbs as well. So once you've done that, all right, so I've got a switch that is identical to the one that KC sends with the kit. It just is a different color, but same product. You can see there's this little ring right here, and this is the one piece that keeps it from fitting, and it doesn't provide any structural benefit to the switch. It's just an aesthetic piece. So if you unscrew that, the switch will then be able to plug into the switchboard, and it will fit that fog light housing for that switch perfectly. It won't leave any gaps. You will need to put some, like I said, liquid nails, Gorilla Glue, etc. in order to keep it completely stationary, but it fits quite nicely and almost looks like it comes from the factory once you do so. So the final piece of the puzzle is, for the interior at least, is figuring out where you're going to ground the brown wire. As you can see, I took off this little trim piece that goes beneath the steering wheel, and there's a metal plate beneath it. I undid that screw, stuck the wire beneath it, and then screwed it back down. And I didn't get to test it with a multimeter, but judging by how the lights are working, it seems to be a solid enough ground. If you do have the manual transmission, you'll see that up there is where the light is brightest, is that where the grommel will be that you can pass the wires through. And then right to the side, pretty conveniently, it might be hard to tell because my floor is bed lined, but there is a bolt or a screw that is used to ground some wires. So just go ahead and stick your wires right there, that brown wire. That seems to work well for people. This would also be a good grounding point if you decide that you don't want to put your switch inside of the little switchboard. Alright, so now that you have completed the interior segment of wiring the KC lights, the other big challenge is finding a suitable place for the relay. What I did here is, you can see there's my air intake, there's my fuse box. There was a hole that was big enough for a 1/4 inch bolt to pass through. The relay harness, that little metal plate that is attached to it, was not big enough for a 1/4 inch bolt, so I simply just took a drill bit and drilled it out a little bit, much the same as what I did with the grommel in order to pass the wires through. And upon doing so, it just passed straight through. It comes into the wheel well right there. If you can't see it, I'll show you one more time. You can see it right there. I sawed it off in order to make it just a, I was just kind of worried about if the suspension was ever fully flexed that it might get a bolt to the tire, so I cut it off in order to make it shorter. And if you go ahead and just sand down that area directly beneath that, or on top of that hole, to where you can remove the paint, it was a suitable ground. The sequence that I went for attaching that was the relay, followed by the black ground wire, and then topped off with the bolt. And it was a suitable ground. I tested it with the multimeter, and it worked out quite nicely. So upon figuring out / placing the relay, you really tackled the tough stuff in installing these lights. You have to run the yellow and white wires right there and there to the positive battery terminal. Just remove one of the bolts on the battery terminal and just stick those wires there, and it'll bolt right back down and you should be good to go. And then you have to do the final step, which is wiring up the KC lights to the power source. Alright, so mounting and hooking up the power to the KC lights is, as I said, the easiest part. Mounting them, there's that bolt on the Apollos. You know, if we're talking about the Apollos specifically, it should be much the same for really any other off-road lights. It just passes through. And on the OEM bumper, which is what these are set up to, you can see right there where it passes through. So just go ahead and bolt that down and you're good to go. I didn't have to, but it just made it easier to remove those plastic end caps. They were just 2 Torx bolts, and I just unscrewed it and was good to go. And I left it because I kind of like the look of the bumper that way. Final step of this installation is taking the power from the relay directly to the lights. You can see where I passed mine straight down through the engine compartment. You could also, where that air conditioning hose is, and I'm not quite sure where that other hose that looks like another thing for the AC leads, there's a hole that you could pass through, and then you could take them out through the grill. The way that I did it, they came down right here. You can see both of them. And you just take the one with the least amount of cord to the one on the side closest to the relay, the one with more cord to the one farthest away. And the one farthest away, I passed it under this central bracket for the bumper, and it kind of kept it out of the way and worked quite nicely. For both of them, they pass out of this, it says Jeep, the trim piece in front of or behind the bumper. They pass out of there and then they just clip in. Same thing over here. You just take you can pry this up some, and it gives you space to pass the wires through. And then you just clip them in, and that keeps the wires out of the way so that you don't have stuff dangling around and makes them look nice and clean. This concludes the installation of these 2 KC Apollo Pro Series fog lights. This is the first Jeep tutorial / review of a product that I've done. I highly recommend these lights. I think aesthetically they look great on the front of the Jeep. The light that they provide is exactly what I needed. It made me realize just how much more light, quite frankly, they provide than the stock headlights, which comparatively are quite dim. If you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you want me to do more videos on Jeep products similar to this, describing an install / giving my feedback on the product. Give me feedback and I'd be happy to do so. I have to install the product, so I'd be happy to try and make your lives a little bit easier in the process. Just in conclusion, go ahead and zip tie all your wires, clean it up a little bit, but you should be good to go. I hope this helped, and I will see you next time.